Hello, Great Valley. My name is Paul Gundersen. I'm one of the elders at the church. The purpose of this video is to provide information regarding the coming pastor search process that begins in January of 2026. But first, some background. In August of this year, Pastor Keith came to the session and formally announced his retirement with the intention of retiring in May of 2026. And it's a well-earned retirement, and we wish Keith well as he moves into this next era of life. Since that time, the session has met on its regular monthly schedule as well as a few additional times for the purpose of addressing two broad sets of issues. On one side is the transition period beginning in June of next year. How do we provide for pastoral care and for pulpit supply during this period of time? The session owns that responsibility. This video then deals with the second area, which is the actual search process. So, a little bit of background on how it works in the Presbyterian church. In the Presbyterian form of government that we belong to, the congregation will form through a nomination and election process a pastor search committee, which we call the PSC. The purpose and the mission of this committee is then to carry out the formal search for our next pastor of the congregation. So they have a big job in front of them. Now, January and February then, thematically, would be January, the nomination month, and February, election. In January, the first Sunday is a communion Sunday. And on that day, we want to set it apart and begin to pray for these nominees some of whom be seated on the PSC. That they will have wisdom and strength, because this process is as much spiritual as it is administrative. In fact, that's the bigger part of the job. So we're setting apart that Sunday to begin to pray in that manner for these candidates. Now, all that said, thereafter, what will happen? In January, members of the congregation will receive a letter that details the nomination process, that has a nomination form and the criteria for the nominees. A window for nomination will be open. When that nomination window closes, then we'll have the slate. We'll announce the slate to the congregation so that you know who you can begin praying for as far as voting. In the month of February, then, we'll turn our eyes to voting on that slate of nominees to determine who will formally be seated on the Pastor Search Committee, again, the PSC. Now, once formed, the PSC has four broad objectives. First, to nominate a chair. Second and third, to complete a church information form as well as a pastor job description. Now, I might add that the church information form and the pastor job description were completed about 12 years ago and used to bring Keith and Patty here, but time has passed. The job has changed, the church has changed, and so those need to be updated. And it is indeed the PSC's responsibility to update those accordingly. Once completed, then, the fourth and largest task is carrying out a formal outbound search for our next pastor. So all that said, that's a bit of what is in front of us. We ask you to start praying now for wisdom and strength for those who will become part of the PSC. And I'll just end this video by saying, hey, Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you at a church service or at a Great Valley gathering between now and then. But just know that these things are coming in January, and we're happy to announce them now before we get into a more formal process that begins next year. Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching.